The way of CVCs being investors can be really different from what VC usually do. So VCs purely focus on financial return, but some of the CVCs, in most of the cases, they always have to bring in the strategic value in it.
Everything founders need to know about corporate venture capital. What exactly are CVCs? Why should founders look to CVCs for investment? How do you know if you're the right fit for CVCs? What do CVCs look for in investments? What do they offer beyond simply the capital? We've got our expert with us today, Tsai, who's an investor at Wayra, which is Telefónica's VC arm. He's actually an exited founder himself and is running and building a massive community of CVCs. So he's a perfect person to tell you all about this today. I'm Amma from the Bay HQ, and this podcast is powered by HPC Innovation Banking. So thank you so much for coming on today. We're going to dive into corporate venture capital today. And let's start with the very basics. Like, what exactly is corporate venture capital? Because I think a lot of people don't fully understand this.
Yeah, definitely. So corporate venture capital, we usually call it as a CVC. So corporate venture capital, in a really simplified way, is really similar to as a VC, but it's backed by a corporate, which is we call it as a parent company. And the way of CVCs being investors can be really different from what VC usually do. So VCs purely focus on financial return, but some of the CVCs, in most of the cases, they always have to bring in the strategic value in it. So the strategic value can also separate into two. One is to enhance your core business, and the other one is to making sure that you bring up the entire peripheral services around the core businesses. So it really depends on how the parent company want to design this and how the parent company sees the CVC department as a business entity or as an independent, financial driven firm. So, and one way to describe CVC is CVC is an investment arm that focusing on bringing the strategic value by bringing the innovation startup in.
And for founders, right, who are listening, so many of them, I think, they would tend to target traditional VCs, but maybe they're a bit more blind about CVCs and they don't necessarily apply as much, or they maybe don't reach out to as much as they should do. Why should founders apply to CVCs? Why do they want CVCs on their cap table?
Yeah, so I think CVCs is actually always not on the top priority whenever founders trying to have a fundraising. And whenever you go on to see some investment news, you would never see CVCs be on top of everything. But I think there's two reasons because of that. The first reason is probably because the founders understand that whenever you have to go for CVCs, the first thing you need to know is what exactly that CVC invested in. And to be honest, we're not doing a great job on this. We're not being transparent enough to tell people what are the startups that we invest. So the founders usually end up with getting a lot of rejections and getting a lot of back and forth about taking them a lot of time. The second thing is because a CVC usually act a little bit slower, not because we have to analyze in terms of are you a good company. We also have a huge team on the backside of our head that we want to making sure if this is aligned with our strategic value. Second of all, as internal team, like technical commercial team, thinks this is something that could potentially work with the corporate itself. And that tends to spending around in months compared to some VC firm can finish that in weeks. But one thing that I think a lot of founders have overlooked is what CVCs can bring on the table is way beyond the capital. Is more about the commercial partnership that can eventually bring. And one thing that you always have to remember is as a founder, you're driving a business, and to drive a business is not about how many capital you can invest it in or you get invested, is about how many revenue that you potentially gonna drive. And to bring the revenue in at the end of the day, after having a call, getting the investment from an investor, you still have to go into the market to actually land a project, land a contract, to sign a contract, to actually deliver the work. And we as a CVC can bring you both of the benefits. So that's why I think a lot of founders, because of the speed and because of the not transparent enough, causing that they always usually forgot about CVC could potentially be a good option.
And how would that work, for example, right? So let's say that they're going to have a partnership with you and you're also an investor. How is that relationship? How does the mechanics of that work?
So in Wayra's case, we do have two separate teams in our company. We have an investment team, we have a platform team. So in terms of working with them, actually, we have the different angles of working with the company we invested in. So the first thing we do is we call it as a strategic fit. So in terms of strategic fit, when they come in or we approach them, we always find an angle to already see how to work with them. So we'll find a certain director levels, C levels in either Telefonica or in the UK, the Telefonic's name is basically Virgin Media O2. We'll find a director helping them to see the angle to integrate them, and that director have to be verbal approval so that they were happy to run a POC with this startup. So in this case, then we can deploy the capital afterwards so that it making more sense about bringing the strategic and then bringing the financial. The other one, we call it as a tech bet. So in terms of tech bet, is namely because it's more like a bet. So the way we do it is actually reversely. We deploy the capital in the beginning, and then we find an angle by our amazing platform team. In the next 3 to 5 years, they basically do like a trial and error, going to every team, showcasing the startup, making sure the startup be the best in front of the potential stakeholders in these scenarios. And then after the final angle, potentially shove them in and integrate them in the future product roadmap of Telefonica.
So I'm sure some people listening right now are thinking this sounds amazing, right? You get both money and you get money in terms of investment, but you also then get potentially massive amounts of revenue as well. But you're going to get lots of applications from people who aren't necessarily the right fit. Which kind of companies or which kind of startups maybe shouldn't be applying to CVCs, and maybe it's not the best move for them and they should be looking at other sources of funding instead?
Yeah, I think startup that CVC might not be on your top priority or top options would be those potentially too early, because we have a hot lesson we learned in Wayra also, that we started ourselves as a accelerator incubator, but we pivoted our business model around 5 years ago, because the biggest pain point we see is those too early founders. When they basically graduate from the accelerator, we realize we can't really help them on working with Telefonica because the size is too different, the lingo is too different, and the FTEs in the startup is not enough to dealing with all these kind of like back and forth, trial and error conversation. And so that's why you see a lot of like CVCs, they usually only invest in any startup like from Series A above, because Series A is actually on the pivotal moment of having an early market success and then trying to expand to a different market. So I think that is the best timing for founders to think about getting CVC investment. So if you were earlier than that, only if you have a special like proprietary technology you think is going to helping the core businesses of the corporate, then otherwise I wouldn't suggest you to put us as a top priority. But always keep in mind that in the future, the potential would be a good fit. The second part is those that we usually talked about between like investment is about, are you an investable company? We see a lot of companies that can bootstrap all the way up, and they actually didn't manage to need the corporate resources that much. And on the same time, we also see people that is not that strategic enough. So in terms of strategic, this word is actually quite ambiguous. And we even till today, I'm just trying to learn like how to define that. But whenever you want CVC to get invested by CVC, you always have to think about what are the strategic value that I can help, or I can benefit to those like departments or corporates. If no, then I wouldn't like suggested you to get our investment by us, because at the end of the day, if you see CVC as a VC, you wouldn't get an investment. The best startup we receive or we approach is always started by a strategic angle. We start by talking about what are the strategic angles that we can bring on both sides, then we get an investment ready. So I think to get everything like to cut to the chase is that you have to be mature enough. The second thing is you have to know what is the strategic value that you have to bring on the table. And I think these two things is actually the most important thing out of every element.
So you mentioned there a bit about what you're looking for in investments, right? And could you dive a bit deeper into that, right? So somebody's, like, especially if you're reaching out to people, right, which I know you do as well. So what would attract you to somebody? So seeing a company that's doing well, and when you reach out to someone, it's showing some level of interest, which obviously gets them excited, and it's going to get people to be like, oh, wow, they've reached out to me. What would encourage you to make that step to reach out to somebody, and because you think that their company is going to be a potential good fit for your portfolio?
So I think in my scenario, because I was a founder before, so I deeply understanding how founder would perceive the expectation of when a VC investor or CVC investor approach you. You get the hype, you get all the like excitement like coming from that. But on the same time, that the reason why we approach is something that we also discussed previously with other like CVC friend about. We trying to define what is a hot deal for us? And we're trying to define, is unicorn something that we chase for? Is unicorn something that we want to get them? And the answer is definitely yes, unicorn. Who doesn't love unicorn, right? But in terms of the hot deals, I realized that CVC is actually not that easily to get excited by how good their previous investors are. You could potentially see, oh, there are some Sequoia backed, Bessemer backed, really good firms, VC firm backed. It's actually like super good for us also. But only the moment that we approach people is because they have shown that they clearly know how to talk to corporate, then we will talk to them. Because there's some amazing founders, they have done an amazing job, but they actually don't know how to work with corporate, which is a shame because we do see that is biggest value that we can bring. If we can't bring the value, how can we expect startups to perceive that actually like join the force? So I'll probably split down into some like specific scenarios like when these box ticks, and I'll be like, oh, I want to approach them. The first thing is if they manage to have an early market success in their like region, a local market, or even their verticals, and we see the projections that they will end up into like telecom, or even in the UK or in Europe, or even the entire like global markets, then we will approach them. Second thing we see is how good they have done on the commercial traction. In terms of commercial tractions, like you don't need to go for the big companies, but you have to understand how to design your product roadmap, how to design your go-to-market strategy. Only by you clearly understand that, we can actually align with your product roadmap or go-to-market strategy to put our name in it, to actually tell you like when should we do it this. And the third thing is we will only approach startups that is not urgently looking for funding, because we know clearly this is not something that we can bring on the table. So the way I do this is I always talk to founders probably around 6 months or even 9 months before they actually open the round. Because during the whole time, you already find an angle. So the time you invested, everything is already like half finished. And then it's quite easy for you to actually like taking them and bringing them to show them the value on the corporate side and on the capital side. So yeah, these three reasons potentially be the ones I'll be super keen to talk to those founders.
We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We just want to give a quick shout out to our headline partners, HSBC Innovation Banking. One of the biggest challenges for so many startups is finding the right bank to support them. Because you might start off and try to use a traditional bank, but they don't understand what you're doing. You're just talking to an AI assistant, or you're talking to somebody who doesn't really understand what it is you're even trying to do. HSBC have got the team they've built out over years to make sure they understand what you're doing. They've got the deep sector expertise, and they can help connect you with the right people to make your dreams come true. So if you want to learn more, check out hbcinnovationbanking.com.
So let's say you reached out to a founder, and like I said, it's at 6 to 9 months potentially for you to invest. What can they do in that relationship to prove the value to you, right? So you made an initial connection. What should they be doing to keep you warm and to keep you interested? Because I think sometimes this happens, right? Where somebody might meet an investor and have that initial chat and they're really excited, but then it kind of drifts away and it doesn't quite go anywhere. How can they best do that? What can the founder do in the best way to really keep that relationship strong?
Yeah, I think keeping the relationship is actually a really, really, I would say really more like an art compared to it's not like a science thing. Because human is something, and people networking is something that is most difficult things that you can do. But one thing I would suggest the founders is in terms of to maintaining and ensuring the relationship goes well is always remember to showcase the value of yours, but not always see us as an investor, or don't see us as the one who bring money on the table and job done. See us somebody can be on your force, be on your team about to helping you to achieve the level you want to achieve. So I love the founders that when they approach me, I love that whenever that happens, is that in the first or second call, they look me in the eye saying that what are the value that can bring for me? Because there's always so many times that founders believe they're on more like an inferior side and invest on the superior side, which is I strongly disagree. It's more like a reverse pitching. Investors have to understand what are the values that you can bring. Otherwise, it's not investment. It's not a good investment, right? So the founders, I loved when they approach us saying that what are the values you as a VC or you as a CVC can bring for us? Showcase us about that. And then at the same time, don't forget to showcase about what all the things you can potentially help. And on the same time, because you definitely have to understand that CVCs or VCs, the deals that we have to go through every month or every week is like actually quite a lot. We can't really like devote it a lot of times on helping you to connecting to the right team. And there's always that in terms of like finding you the right team, you have to wait intently about, oh, what's the change that the team's actually been happening. I have to wait until they respond me so that I can talk to what's the update on that side. But please always feel proactively showing the people you want to meet, or even find out a way to like, hey, Kyle, I think this team in Telefonica is super interesting. And this is the conversation I think would be helping you to showcase our value. Can you help us to connect with them so that you have already prepared a strategic angle, as I mentioned about? And it's easy for us to actually like starting the conversation saying, hey, I have an amazing startup. We're trying to invest in them, but we're still under validation. But I believe you guys can actually have some synergies between these two teams. How about having an intro call? We discover a little bit together. I think that is the best way that you're constantly showing and constantly hustling about finding the angle, which just saves us a lot of time. And you showcase like how clearly you know about our value and your value.
I think it's really interesting what you said there about the relationship between the investor and the founder. And I do think there's two types of founders, right, that I've seen, where some of them are just desperate for money, any type of money, right? But that like attitude makes or repel an investor, right? Whereas when the founders feel very strong in what they're doing, they've got that conviction, then they can have that conversation with you and say, well, actually, I need to make sure you're the right person for me as well. And I think, like I said, many investors really respect that. And you said there about like them understanding, say, Telefonica and saying like, okay, this team of Telefonica would be the one for us to connect with. Do you have any way that could help people try to navigate, especially if they're not from a corporate background themselves? What kind of different ways could a large organization, larger corporate help that maybe they should be thinking about and trying to map out? Like, what do you have any tips on how they could do that?
Yeah, we actually got asked a lot of times in terms of like, hey, I know I'm building this. I'm super curious, but I'm super like not quite so sure about which team I'm supposed to talk to. It's such a huge corporate. And I think there's multiple ways that you can give it a try. But as previously what I mentioned about that, you always have to have an early market like traction, right? So as long as you have an early market traction, you always have to look back about what are the teams I usually talk to. If I'm more like a customer experience a platform, was the team that I usually talk to build an early market success is the customer experience team, or is the R&D team? Or is it more on the UI UX team? What are the teams that I usually have the best conversation about? And you replicate that model to the corporate side. But this would not only like lead you to probably the high level team, but you also would have more dialogue to prepare in terms of different kind of blurbs. So I'll give you an example. So we do have scenarios that a startup that come to us, they told us that they usually talk to, let's say, a cybersecurity team. But we end up not talking to a cybersecurity team, but on the other side, the other team, because on the same time, the startup itself is also pivoting on the same time. So by sharing that information, don't only share about what are the teams or kind of like department you have usually work with. Also tell us more about if you want to pivot your business strategy. On the same time, if we bring let's say if there's a cybersecurity team that you have usually talked to, and we bring the cybersecurity that we believe is going to be a fit. And after talking, you realize that, oh, maybe this model is not is not going to happen, is not going to fly in corporates. And that team might be telling that, hey, I don't think this is going to fly. But how about go to like, probably you used to do large corporate, large enterprise. They tell you to think about maybe SMEs or even Soho. And then if you're thinking about SME and Soho is a good one, then you have to pivot again. Then we find another team for you. But you don't need to expect yourself to precisely know which team that you're supposed to be under, but you always have to know what, in a high level perspective, what are the teams I usually can talk to. And the easy thing, leverage LinkedIn. If you know you're usually working on the optical network, go on Telefonica, search who is working into optical network, look about what are the things they usually do about, and see where are the angles you can potentially push them through. And even better, if you were doing optical network and the people you find would be a super great fit, they probably left that team because people change teams a lot. But also trying to connect to them, because on the same time, their previous knowledge will help you a lot on navigating you to the right people. eventually helping you to bring on the board.
And one of the things I know you're super passionate about as well is connecting CVCs together, right? And I think you identified a problem there where a lot of time the CVCs work in silos. Can you explain what's the reason behind that? Why do you think that CVCs could really work together and why would that benefit them?
I think CVC is actually a really, really, we're actually quite weird, but actually we're quite appealing on the same time. We're like the sexy but a little bit ugly creature, but we managed to find our value problem at the same time. But eventually I see the angle like CVC collaborate is there's two reasons, because CVC tend to not exactly fully showcase in front of people. We're not being transparent enough. We're not telling people what kind of things we want to do. And the reason behind that is because CVC change a lot. And in terms of a lot, it can be every quarter we change a little bit. Every year we change a little bit. It might be the stage. We suddenly want to change it to earlier stage. It might be region. We suddenly want to look into a new market, emerging market maybe, or new technology. It might be change in terms of an investment thesis. We might doing something on B2B cloud, and maybe next day we might turn it into industry 4.0, or might become like smart city 4.0, things like that. So we change too often that we start to wondering, should I tell people what I'm doing right now? And the other thing is that CVCs usually don't know how to leverage their actual resources in terms of corporate resources. I understand that when I actually have a conversation with other CVC, they understand their corporate resources is like a magical, they're magic. It's like a secret sauce for every CVCs. But actually, if you manage to share it as a little bit like magic sauce, or let's say secret sauce between CVCs, you actually can generate more revenue, more value than you can ever imagine. So it all started from all these kind of like reasons. And I started to feel like, hey, I think I want to know more about CVC, because I know that CVCs are all different. And when I started to do that around a year ago, I started from talking to who we believe was the most similar to us, which is telecom CVC. And as we started to talk to every telecom CVCs, we understand that two reasons. One is that telecom CVCs don't usually only invest in telecom. And telecom CVCs, most of the cases, like they don't even invest in telecom. So that brings us actually like reflected a little bit earlier this year saying, hey, but why do we only focus on telecom CVCs? It doesn't make sense for it because everybody looks way broader. Even our staff look way broader than that. So we decided to go bigger. We decided to go global because we think this is like, we want to connecting the geographically footprint, and we do think that the resource is supposed to share globally. So we started like discussing and talking to all CVC, and we realized that everybody is all different, but the pain point is quite similar. All unfold under three brackets. The first thing is definitely deal flow in terms of deal flow exchange, new market knowledge, new market insight. The second thing is like external DD. We want to like create a fast track between like CVCs to their corporate route. They're helping other CVCs to understand how to locate or navigate, as you the question that you mentioned about how to navigate the like organization and corporate. And CVC can manage to do that like mutually to help each other. The last thing is more about the portfolio growth. And in terms of the portfolio that you will see CVC have around 5, 10s, or even hundreds of thousands of portfolios in most cases. But at the same time that we only have a limited capacity in terms of helping them to grow. So we want to do something is deliberate and providing equal options for the portfolio founder to decide which market they want to grow. And because we are so insistent in global presence, that's why every portfolio founder can choose what kind of markets they want to grow. And we're always a certain CVCs over there helping them to do the commercial and technical readiness so that they can basically doesn't need to worry about like, oh, I don't think I'm confident enough. The CVC there will actually telling you this angle would potentially be the best angle for you to enter the market. And I think it's really amazing. Yeah.
So just before we jump to quick fire questions, obviously you've come from a founder background into the CVC world, and you're meeting so many different other CVCs as well. What's been the most exciting thing about that transition for you? Like, what's the bit that's keeping you as excited as you are?
Something excites me the most is, and I think it's something that it drives me like changing transition from founders to CVCs, even to back in the days, from founders to VCs to CVCs, is I love to see when there's some untapped market being explored and people suddenly realize that actually this is something needed. So as I'm reading an article from of the ARC, which is like a portfolio from Sequoia, that the way how they design in terms of like the product market fit have been separated into, I think it's in three. And the first thing they called it as a hair on fire, which is like, oh, this is something I needed the most. And a lot of founders have already working a great job with that. The second thing is called hard fact, which is something that they feel there's a pain point. They do know there's a pain point, but they don't know how to solve it. And there's the other thing we call as a future vision, which is far more future. They probably not be a good fit, not a solution right now, but will be needed. So I love to solve the hard fact, which is like people all have that pain point, but nobody willing to do that or nobody know how to do that. And I like to be the pioneer in that field. I like to explore that together. There's always a commitment I made to other CVCs that I don't do something not useful. I only would do something useful but not useless. And I love honesty and transparency. So all the people that we are having a chat with is super transparent to us because we all want to make something that we have been desiring for a long time, to make it good, to make it in a really, really promising way. And we all have the same belief is only by collaboration, the CVCs would become better. And we do think that this is something that we have been missed out a lot. And I would say it's more about discovering the untapped market, discovering some problems that hasn't been solved yet. Yeah.
So I've learned so much myself today. I think it's been a great episode. Thank you so much. We're going to have to go to the quick fire questions now. So the first question is, there are 3 British Asians or Asians in Britain you think are doing incredible work right now and you'd love to shout them out.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really great question. I want to shout out to in a different different profile. So the first one I want to shout out is Abdul. Abdul's from Intel Capital, and he's a legendary guy. He's so knowledgeable, and whenever he talked about how to leverage between investment and strategy resources, he's so on point. And I love the way whenever I talk to him, he's so insightful, and he's like a magical wizard. I foresee everything, to be honest. And I learn a lot from him. I think he's such a really, really great person with great personality. I love that. The other I want to shout out is Farik. So Farik is a general partner as a VC firm called System Nova. And he's such a ledge. He connected so many people. He knows how to leverage resources between people. He's always on top of people's, like whenever he saw some specific topic, he'd think about certain people. And the way he leveraged resources is out of my imagination. I can't even believe how people can actually function like that. So it's crazy. And the last thing is one of our portfolio founders called Alex. And he's the founder of Haya, which is one of our portfolio. The reason why I love him is that he is basically the most humble person I've ever seen. He's so knowledgeable. On the same time, he's so humble. He knows exactly where is the future is going to be like, and he knows exactly how to pair Haya's development with that future trend. And the way he analyzes on the startup ecosystem is such on point and such insightful. So yeah, these are the 3 people that I'm biggest fan of. Yeah.
Awesome. So if people want to learn more about you and what you're up to and what investments you're doing are, where should they go to?
Yeah, so you can always find me on LinkedIn. I just turned my LinkedIn into creator mode. Not an easy job. I'll try to keep up on my posting habits. But on the same time, whenever you want to reach out to me, you can always connect me on my LinkedIn, or even just go on our website and reach out to me via email.
What is the website for the CVC as well?
Yeah, so currently, in terms of the CVC initiative and community we're building, this is something that we want to keep it early. We want to share that earlier, but we're planning to have a landing page, of course. But on the same time, is that we are still under discussion with a lot of CVC on building the blocks together. So potentially we're going to launch the entire CVC community in July this year. So in July, we will be announcing more information about that.
Awesome. And then is there anything that you need help with right now that maybe an audience member could reach out and help you with?
Yeah, definitely. So currently, in terms of building these blocks, that one most important thing is building by CVC. So at the end of the day, if there's any great CVC network of everybody's, and you think this is something that would fit their value, and you think this is something they're going to fit in terms of their strategy also, because at the end of the day, the other CVC is still startup and founders and startup. We have to make sure that we can bring the value they want and they can bring the value we want, right? So if they have any CVC network, happy to have the intro, happy to have a chat.
Awesome. So thanks so much for coming on today. Have you got any final words?
Yeah, really thank you so much for inviting me. I love these kind of like really great vision, really great. I think the reason why we're here today is I want to talk to everyone. I want to share to everyone, and I want to making sure that you hustle your way. But whenever you hustle your way, always think about how can you help people? How can I help people? Only by bringing the mutual benefits, only by understanding and to provide something that others people needed will make you stronger and better.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.